Our undercover correspondent Danny Sutcliffe has been bravely facing the very worst this crisis has to offer and has been stationed in Kabul for the last 2 weeks. Danny, as this crisis deepens and the desperate attempts to evacuate as many people as possible are now taking place under the active threat of attack, how are things feeling over there?
Hello, Sam. That's right, I'm here in Kabul, and I'd just like to say, where's me fucking Pulitzer? All I've heard for the last week is Clarissa Ward this, Clarissa Ward that. Well, where is she now, eh? I'll tell you where. Gone.
Oh, she's such a brave journalist interviewing the Taliban, even though she's a woman.
Please. I'm still here, and as an airy misogynist with an opium problem, I think we can all agree who's taking the real risk.
Danny, I'm not sure your petty professional rivalry is the real human interest story here.
Isn't it, though? I've been keeping up with the international news, and I thought framing this crisis in terms of Western victimhood was the whole point.
What do you mean by that?
Really? This weakens the US and the West on the world stage. This emboldens Russia and China's foreign policy plans for the Middle East. Biden's chaotic withdrawal shows the weakness of the UK-US relationship. Me, fucking me.
Yeah, alright, fair enough. Let's refocus instead on what the events of the last fortnight actually mean for the people of Afghanistan then.
It means what the failure of Western imperialism always means, Sam. A former client state in complete turmoil, with violent authoritarians rushing to fill the vacuum of power. The US and its allies have waged a 20-year war and have successfully replaced the Taliban with... I'd ask for a drum roll, but pop music's banned now. The Taliban. It's a win for everyone. If by everyone you mean Islamic State and the American defence contractors who have turned massive profits. Oh, and the Taliban. But that kinda goes without saying.
Well, you're being surprisingly self-righteous and coherent today, Danny.
Can't stress enough the purity of the opium over here, mate. It really does help me to focus.
Yep, that sounds about right. Let's talk about the so-called gains of this decades-long conflict then. That's a phrase that keeps being repeated by our leaders. Is there a feeling on the ground that those have really been squandered?
Oh no, not at all, pal. There are loads of gains here on the ground. The Taliban have gained guns, gear, helicopters, vehicles, state-of-the-art military tech and stronger allies in China. Islamic State have gained the ability to once again mount terrorist attacks in the heart of Afghanistan. And the women and girls here have had years to really start to appreciate the rights and newfound freedoms that are about to be ripped away from them.
Look, I hate to go back to the Western perspective again, but from where we stand, are any of those pluses?
No, Sam, not at all.
But isn't there an argument to be made here that nations like Afghanistan have a right to self-determination? That the West's attempts to impose its will on other nations amounts to little more than modern colonialism?
Ah, yes, the victory crow of the sanctimonious modern lefty. Imperialism has failed, and the return of a fascist theocracy is the true liberation of Afghanistan. I'm not sure how many urban liberal Afghans feel like the Taliban sweeping through the streets is the greatest expression of their right to self-determination, Sam. I'd love to ask some women how empowered they feel right now, but I can't find any because they're all cowering indoors.
I wouldn't call it a victory crow, Danny. I might be against Western imperialism, but funnily enough, I'm also not an enormous fan of regressive religious dictatorships. This is obviously a humanitarian disaster on every front, but in a way, it is proof that the West's long-term mission was ultimately a misguided one.
Well, of course, you and Joe Biden would say that, Sam, because that's far easier to argue than admitting that the West has spent 20 years grotesquely mismanaging this entire conflict and has now botched this withdrawal in an equally incompetent way. Nation building in Afghanistan was always an impossible task, and it wasn't really why we got involved in the first place, so it's fine that we basically said, fuck it, right at the end. Frame the whole war in those misleading terms, and it suddenly becomes perfectly acceptable that we've now decided to simply abandon the whole endeavour and throw millions of people to the fucking wolves.
Well then, what's the alternative exactly? Break the Doha Agreement signed by the Trump administration with the Taliban and risk further endangering American troops? Or a permanent military presence in Afghanistan?
Well, for one, Sam, the Taliban themselves have stuck to the Doha Agreement about as firmly as Liam from Love Island sticks to a relationship. Sorry, Millie, but as soon as you turn your back, he's going to be aggressively reclaiming territory from other women. And for two, I'm going to say this for about the millionth time this week, I'm not arguing that the withdrawal shouldn't have happened. But that doesn't mean it's been managed at all well or in a way that left the Afghan National Army capable of ever mounting a reasonable defence against the Taliban advance. It may well be the case that ultimately Biden's done the only thing he reasonably could, but he's completely fucked up how he did it.
But in a way, wasn't the die for this tragedy cast when Trump scaled back America's troop deployment in the first place, and openly negotiated with the Taliban over the Afghan government, and freed their leaders from prison?
Look, mate, I think we've all gone off Trump a bit, me included. But at some point, you've got to take responsibility for being stupid enough to wear your nicest shoes as you stamp on a bag of flaming dog shit on your doorstep. And another thing... Oh, fuck. One sec, pal. Hang on.
Danny, what's going on?
Just bear with me, mate. I'm having a bit of trouble with the with the live feed. There we go. As I was saying, here in Kabul, it's...
Unbelievable. You're not in Afghanistan at all, are you?
That is an outrageous slur, sir. How dare you? Oh, for fuck's sake.
So, where are you exactly, Danny?
I'm in a travel lodge in Basingstoke.
So you've not actually got anything to offer about the experience of Afghans on the ground at all then, have you?
No.
Anything you'd like to say to Clarissa Ward at this point?
Sorry, Clarissa. This opium is pretty good, though.
Yeah, well, I somehow suspect it's only going to get better in the next few years.
Good point! Every cloud and all that. I'm Danny Sutcliffe, reporting for IC News.